Mayday, Mayday. This is Elliot Barad of Special Sea Rescue C-730. Over. Come in. Over. This is...
Alright, so it wasn't that hard back in the day to find what many would consider to be Resident Evil clones, but today I want to talk about one of the more interesting attempts to capture that audience while doing something different. Very different. Anyway, here's Blue Stinger. Now, as many Sega fans will be well aware of, this game got two different versions. The version I'm talking about today had the fixed camera angles, but for the international release, Activision made the developers at Climax Graphics change it to a more standard third-person perspective. Now, I don't own the PAL version of this game. I mean, I picked up this Japanese copy dirt cheap to see if I even liked it, and I wanted to play it as it was originally intended, so let's take a look at Blue Stinger and see how yet another game held hostage on the Dreamcast holds up. Alright, this is going to be a bit weird, so get ready for some schlock. Alright, so our story begins with the introduction of Dinosaur Island, which rose from an earthquake in the year 2000. It just happens to match the diameter of a certain meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Now in the current year of 2018, Elliot is on vacation in his boat just near the island, and he's having a yarn with his mate Tim about why there's a research facility on the island, like it wouldn't be fucking obvious, and this sets the tone early with some quality voice acting.
I'm just a crew member of the supply ship. Heck, I don't even get permission to enter the residential district on the island.
We have a brief chat about Tim's anime-looking weeb ship, but get rudely interrupted by another meteorite hitting the island. The explosion seems to have caused a force field to spread around the island, but things get weirder as this spirit-looking thing takes over Nephilim while Tim is stuck outside this strange wall. Shit goes from bad to worse as these flying fuckers come out and attack us, blowing up the boat and sending us into the water. A helicopter crashes where we washed up as well, but once we get up, Nephilim flies away. Yeah, this is a horror game, and the tone is all over the place, so get used to it. Anyway, we get a radio call from a woman in Island Security named Janine. We can't get any info off her as the call is cut off, so I guess we need to go find her instead, but looks like we're being watched. We finally start to make our way through the base while picking up some ID cards and kicking some ass before we find ourselves in a little bit of trouble. Thankfully, we're saved by this fella, Dogs. He's a bit sus on us at first, but he knows our mate Tim, and after a rough start, he decides to tag along.
Obviously, you're going to need good help, like me. I can't let a wimp like you go alone.
Whatever.
While we're killing these monsters and taking their money like it's GTA, we run into Nephilim again, who continues to not say anything, while giving us strange visions. Dogs ain't having a bar of it, but we soldier on to where we get our ass saved again, this time by Janine. We pick up a few essentials and, accidentally blow up this shuttle before heading up and asking this lady what the fuck is going on.
I knew it. She's perfect. She's my kind of girl.
Settle down there, Chief. Now, Nephilim shows up and is just hanging around while we get our introductions out of the way. We're all not quite sure what's happened to cause the monsters, but we all know that this place is pretty sus and makes a shitload of money with its research. I don't know, they seem to be doing this shit with space biology, but we need a lab idea to know more, and Dogs is keen to head to the pub, so let's fucking go!
Why do we have to go drinking now?
Don't be ridiculous. The entire city area has been destroyed. The bar may not even exist.
There's nothing you can't get at Rat's place. That's what we say.
Now this is where the tone gets really weird. It turns out it's Christmas time, and the happy tunes come in while you're just busy blowing monsters' heads off. Now, it turns out that there's this huge gate blocking the bar, so we have to find another way in, and Janine reckons that we can get through the market, so let's go. There's a lot of really bizarre choices with this game, but the joyful Christmas vibe is easily the strangest. Anyway, we find this fella in the staff room who's in pretty rough shape. He needs medicine, normally found in the pharmacy stand, but they're all sold out. There's medicine on level 2, but we need to find all these pen stamps to unlock the second level. This place is a bit of a maze, but we eventually get the stamps and head upstairs. There's a pretty big monster upstairs who, once killed, spits out a shitload of coins, and in the next room we're able to pick up old mate's medicine. Looks like he's gonna live, and he hands us a keycard that will give us some ammo and a shotgun. Oh, and old mate here gives us this key to this safe, so we can get this keycard for the freezer. This section is basically just trying not to freeze to death until finally we have this really easy boss fight with this dinosaur looking thing. You basically just have to run in circles and wind down its health.
Hang on, I'll give you a hand. I'll snap deep.
Anyway, we turn up the heat and run back through until we end up in this area of absolute eye candy. In the Sega arcade, we run into this crying little girl, and she gives us a token that we use to win her a little prize. We ask where her parents are, but let's be real, they're fucking dead. She gives us a code to the locked door in the arcade, and we head on through to the bar. Finally! We head downstairs and find Rats hiding in the wine cellar.
Dogs, thank God you're here. Ready to pay off your debt?
Dang, he's alive!
Now, Rats has his hands on the lab ID that we need behind the fridge, so we pick up a few bits, and after picking up some piranha killer at the fishing shop, we toss that shit into the water and deal with some of the most bizarre swimming controls ever, and eventually get back to where we started. Yeah, that girl that was crying in the arcade about her parents? Fuck that bitch. Back with Janine, we hand her the ID.
Welcome home, tough guy.
This is for you, honey.
Fuck, this dialogue is bad. Anyway, we chuck the password in, but we can't access the labs because there's not enough power coming in, so we head back off to fuck shit up some more. After we leave, however, we, the audience, find out Janine has a picture of dogs. What's going on there? On our travels, we run into another boss fight, which again is just beaten by running in circles and attacking. It's a bit shit, but hey, we score this minigun out of it. We need to get across this clearing, so we cause this giant fuel tank to literally explode, sending us over the gap, which would absolutely kill us, but we get up like nothing happened. Like, what the fuck kind of idea was that? Anyway, at the power station, we need to fix some things up, so we grab our supplies and get to work fixing some parts of the station. This is easy enough, as you're either just running around these green things or taking on single enemies with this cool stun baton, till eventually we're back in the main room. Now I've got the power working, but it isn't routing to where we need it, so we have to head up to another level and see what the problem is. Now, after a bit of dodging these things while running through this area designed by people who just fucking despised handrails, we discover these creatures are disrupting the power. There we are. Now to run back. Oh, and we finally get to use this minigun. Fuck yeah. Anyway, before we get back to the brain room, Janine and Neffy, get well acquainted, I guess?
Neffy? Yes?
We thought she was hurting Janine, but she was only showing her visions, trying to tell her what she was telling us. Don't ask me what it was, I wasn't listening, but anyway, next stop is the lab, where we reckon this all started.
The electricity's back on. I can unlock the run road and open the door to the car. It's a lot safer to use the car. Merry Christmas!
It's now the 25th.
Oh, this is the worst Christmas I ever had.
So we make our epic entrance to the lab and get a better change of clothes. Elliot gets into this lab gear while Dogs is Santa because fuck you, it's Christmas. And after a totally not gay bath together, we're clean enough to head in. But not everything is what it seems because they seem to have the blob in here. We put him down easy enough, but Elliot got real sick from the encounter, so we've got to find some medicine. This lady we helped reckons there's a doctor who can help, but we're gonna go find him first. Elliot is getting sicker by the minute, and the lab is just trying to lock us in, but as he transforms, we're now able to climb out of rooms. We collect this frozen blood sample in this weird experiment room and thaw that shit out so we can trick the elevator into thinking that we're not fucked up. In this area, we find the doctor we're after, but he's not looking too good, so we gotta put this guy down. We find a way to slow the transformation, but Elliot is getting worse, and we don't have much time. We run through yet another fuck handrail section and fight the blob in another underwhelming fight, which gives us a key to the medicine room where we can finally get Elliot a cure.
Oh, man. I thought it'd have to kill you.
Thanks.
I skipped over a lot here, but there's just a lot of running back and forth and radio calls with Janine that just don't push any plot. Anyway, we somehow get a keycard off this dog for the clone room, which then leads us down this ridiculously long area where we find the blue meteor that we reckon is trying to get to whatever is under the base, but we need to go all the way back to Janine to tell her what's going on, and we can't take the car because the road's fucked up. Of course it is. Now back with Janine, we find out that the meteor was stopped before it could go all the way under the base, and that's why it took the form of Nephilim. Now this data reveals a giant creature in an egg below the base, and Nephilim needs us to get to it, due to the failsafe missile for an outbreak being disrupted when she crashed into the satellite. Janine has a plan to get the meteor through the remaining shutters, but needs us to get a rifle from her apartment first. We wanted to watch a movie, but this cunt ruined it, so back to work, I guess. This is a pretty drawn out section, but it isn't too bad overall. It's just a lot of running through rooms, but eventually we get Janine's rifle and find out a certain secret of hers.
Hey, what's this?
None of your business.
But this lady holding a baby, she's an Easter shooting instructor.
Jean King, my ex-wife.
Then the baby is...
Janine, my daughter.
After some brief divorce counseling, we run back to Janine and just straight up throw dogs in the deep end.
Is that any way to talk to your father?
They have their moment, and then we discuss how we're going to help Nephilim. If we destroy this hydraulic pump, the shutters should open for Nephi to get through to the egg, so we make our way to this water tower to give Janine a good shot. Now this boat is only good for 2, so we send them on and run through this water section that's just a bit too long, only for them to get stuck in the elevator up the tower, and then need us to help them of course, so we make our way up this pretty neat section and then turn the power back on. The only problem is, Janine needs time to set up, so we have to hold off these monsters for a few minutes. Once the shutters are open, Nephi is in, and begins this huge battle with the creature. This sure is epic, but we've got to run. Now, Nephi looked to have the upper hand, but then we're surprised by the creature, who isn't too keen on us leaving, so we have to stay and fight in what is a pretty simple 2-phase boss fight if you save enough ammo. You kinda just have to run left and right avoiding attacks. Anyway, he goes down, the shield is destroyed, and Nephilim flies back into space, leaving us to clean up the mess. Well, there was certainly a lot going for it, but it's another case of some great ideas being handled very poorly. But anyway, let's talk about how the game shapes up as a whole. Now, one of the main things I would see people say about this game is that the tone is all over the place, and they weren't lying. The story itself is trying to play it straight. I mean, we've got some pretty ambitious ideas here, and the game sets the stakes pretty high. As you uncover more of what's going on underneath the island and what they've been up to at this facility, it showed that the developers wanted to make something epic, even if the results are a bit of a mixed affair. There is a little teaser for a possible sequel that obviously never happened, even though according to Sega, this game was a success in the US and Europe. I don't really know what they could have done with it though, unless they set something in space or another planet or something like that, because without that teaser, this seems like a pretty self-contained story, but I guess we'll never know anyway. What we've got here is fun, but the tonal shifts are really weird and make this quite a bizarre experience. The force field that traps everyone on the island, paired with the horrific monsters now taking it over, get mixed in with this jolly Christmas theme. It's sort of what you can see working if it was handled a bit better. I mean, it works for something like Die Hard, but here it's just really strange. I think the soundtrack is what affects it the most though. I mean, the themes here are at times pretty great, but there are simply not enough ambient tracks floating around in the background. It's a bit hard on the ears when the game is constantly playing high energy tracks, even when I'm just running down a hallway with no enemies. The shopping areas with the happy holiday music could have been swapped out with something a little more low-key and creepy, and it would have had this really interesting contrast of this place getting ready for the holidays now being all fucked up. I don't know, I see potential here, but constantly blaring happy tunes on a loop gets just a little bit annoying. Now, the silliness is really held together by some classic Dreamcast era voice acting. You know what I mean. This is something that we just expect with games of this era. Every now and again, you'll be surprised by some quality voice acting, but with Blue Stinger, that is certainly not the case. Although you'd probably be prepared for what's to come, knowing that your protagonists are literally Sonic and Dr. Robotnik. What we get is a heap of stilted dialogue that drifts anywhere from a bit dodgy to just straight up so bad it's good. I love a bit of bad dialogue. It can make things rather entertaining, but it would have been nice to get something a bit more suitable. Like, we're dealing with a bunch of horrific monsters fucking shit up all over this island, but like a few of the games I've reviewed so far, I'm busy laughing and wondering who the fuck thought some of this delivery was okay.
Why did you get a divorce?
I forgot what it was all about. Besides, it was 20 years ago. Jean was so hard-headed, she got sick and passed away.
Crazy.
The characters themselves are okay, I guess. I mean, they're nothing to write home about, but they serve the story well enough. I was just hoping for a little bit more chemistry between Sonic and Robotnik. Oh, let's not forget the lip syncing, or rather the lack of lip syncing entirely. It's something that you didn't really expect a whole lot of in the 90s outside of pre-rendered scenes, but whether it's a pre-rendered scene or an in-engine scene with this game, you'll get a bunch of really dodgy mouth movements that just makes it all feel a little bit unfinished. Really, the character models in general are lacking quite a bit, which is really disappointing when you look at just how much potential was there. It can be hard to ignore the dodgy models in this game. Even the pre-rendered scenes, they just aren't that good, but when it comes to the in-game versions, they really do just look straight up unfinished. Now, apparently the developers weren't really aware of what the Dreamcast was fully capable of and didn't really use the system to its full capabilities, so lackluster models are definitely a result of that. The game runs super smooth at least, but if this game had models more comparable to, like, D2 or something, this could have really been something special. While our characters are premium jank, the enemies look far better in comparison. They have a good amount of detail and can even lose their heads in combat and shit like that. We've got a fair bit of variety with the enemies as well, and really, they all look pretty decent. I love the details with the blood too. I mean, it's pretty comical just how much blood spits out in combat, but as you're attacking enemies, the blood will paint the floor and the walls better than even the recent Dead Rising remaster. What really sold me on this game though was the environments. The different areas that you have to run through look really good, and there are a heap of really nicely detailed areas that aren't just a bunch of empty rooms like a lot of other 3D games of that era. There's a lot of effort put in here to really make this facility feel like a functioning environment, and the town part of the map feels surprisingly lived in. Going into the hotel and bars and having rooms filled with stuff was the sort of thing that really surprised me. I just really wish the characters looked as good. It's just so fucking disappointing when you think about what a little bit of extra time could have done to make our characters here just as impressive, because some of these areas are really cool. Even a lot of outdoor areas are fantastic, like the water tower that reveals just how big the area over the giant egg really is. Now, gameplay in Blue Stinger is solid enough, but as expected, it can get a bit clunky. So while we're dealing with fixed camera angles in this game, we're not rolling with tank controls. It's all free movement with a camera that follows you through each area. It can take a minute to settle in like any of these older games, but for the most part the movement is fine enough for what it's going for. The camera can be a little bit awkward here and there, and you will have to be careful with some of these areas that you can fall down. Man, these rope things were a fucking godsend. Oh, and the swimming sucks, but you already knew that. Now, you can switch between Elliot and dogs at any time throughout most of the game. Some spots you will be locked to a character, but otherwise it's as simple as going into the menu and selecting the other player. The developers couldn't quite figure out how to have both on screen at once for combat, so while you are one character, the other one just hides in the void. It's weird, but you just roll with it. There are differences between the characters. I mean, Elliot does run faster, so you will spend most of your time running through the areas as him, but each character has weapons that only they can use. Elliot can have a gun and a melee weapon equipped at the same time, unlike dogs, but things like the Gatling gun make dogs worth using, especially in boss fights. You will be able to expand characters' health with certain foods, which I probably didn't even end up using till like halfway through the game. Otherwise, it's pretty standard affair with different food and drink replenishing health. Now, you can get interrupted using these, which is just a little bit annoying, but didn't cause too many issues. You will be using the menu a lot though, and can usually download a map for different areas, which is both handy and annoying because the map can get a little bit confusing to use. The map is a decent size, but there is a lot of backtracking, so you'll want to get familiar with different areas or you will get lost. In classic horror game fashion, you will also be collecting a lot of keys to get around too, but rather than having to go into the menu to select these keys to unlock doors, it will just automatically do it. It's really handy. Even if you are lost, you'll never be too far away from a save station. This isn't a survival horror game, so you get unlimited saves, and anything that you aren't finding in the environment, you're instead buying from these vending machines. Things are bought using coins that you'll get from killing enemies, which is another thing about this game that is tonally bizarre. You'll have a super bloody encounter that results in enemies spitting coins all over the place like some arcade game. Thought it was really funny. And that finally leads me to the combat of the game. It's janky, but it still works for the most part. You don't have an aim button, you'll just need to be facing the enemy direction and let the auto aim do the rest. It took me a bit to get used to as I kept accidentally shooting something, but once you settle in, it's fine overall. Melee is kind of the same in that it functions well enough, even if it could have used a bit of tightening up. That being said, killing something with something like the fire axe is really satisfying, enough to get a pass. The game has a pretty sizey weapon list, but some of these guns are really fucking expensive. I mean, some areas do have constantly respawning enemies that will just spit out coins, and I guess you could grind it out, but I don't know, I didn't really bother with any of that stuff because I didn't think it'd be that fun to do, and a lot of these weapons you'll either find later or you just won't really need to beat the game anyway, so I don't know, I didn't bother with it. Really, I'd say overall the gameplay is super dated, but is functional enough. It gets held up by a large weapon list, a decent enough enemy roster, and not overly difficult gameplay. Really, the biggest drag is some of the absolutely fucking bland boss fights. All you have to do with these sections is just run around the monsters and attack without any other strategy. The final boss fight, I was kind of glad it was easy because of the lack of save point right before it, but these sections lacked a bit of flair and overall polish, but I could describe many parts of this game, so let's wrap this one up with my final thoughts. Now, Blue Stinger is low-key pretty good. I mean, it's not going to blow you away with some great combat or some great voice acting even, but, you know, for the most part, it pretty well succeeds in what it sets out to do. The inconsistencies are undeniable, but there's a lot of charm in this game. I feel like a bit more time and talent could have made this an all-time classic, but what we got instead was a pretty solid cheesy romp that was better than something like Alone in the Dark 4, which I played recently and gave an almost generous 6 out of 10. This game won me over a bit. I mean, I was going into it expecting the worst, but at the end of the day, I found it quite charming, so it gets a 7 out of 10 from me. Maybe go check out the PAL version if the fixed camera angles aren't your thing. Anyway, I'll catch you next time.